Well, hello, this is Pad of Team Me. We are going to do something really exciting today, which is to look at the personalities of chatbots. Now, if you're familiar with Team Me and the work that I do, we utilize a wonderful tool which identifies people's personalities in terms of their archetypal character traits and how those go together to explain why they do what they do the way that they do it, how they show up, which of course is the key to performance. It's not so much skills and knowledge, but actually how you show up, how you approach situations that leads to the results that you are getting in life. And we use this with CEOs, with leaders and managers, with executives seeking to improve their performance and get promoted. We use it also with couples counseling. We use it for all kinds of situations where individuals are trying to understand who they are, what makes them tick, and how to approach life in a more effective and more fulfilling way. It has multiple benefits in many ways. But today, we're going to be applying the same technology, the same methodology that we use on humans to a bunch of chatbots. We're going to split this into 4 separate pieces, 4 separate articles to assess different chatbots. We're going to look at ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and Google's Gemini. We have taken these chatbots through the same questions and given them the same request for response that we would give any human being. Now, if you've done this profile, you know that it takes about 90 seconds to complete the questions. The chatbots took less time than that, but they were given very clean language to basically say, we are assessing your personality. We just want to know your response to these questions. And the questions are very specific. They've been validated academically as getting down to the specific character types that we were looking for. And if you don't know much about the Team Me model, let's delve a little bit into that now so that you get an idea of where we are heading. So here we can see we've got 6 key character types, and each one of them is driven by a set of values. And we have essentially at the top, we're looking at command. Then we have alongside that action. Then alongside that, we have knowledge. And in the other camp, we have transformation, we have connection, and we have enjoyment. These are, and all the related issues around each of those key themes, we can identify these as specific characters that appear in pretty much every myth, every story you've ever heard, every classic movie that you've ever seen, every book you've read. These are the characters that come up time and time again. We focus on archetypes because they explain human nature and human decision making and performance and behaviors in a way that practically nothing else does. It operates at a particular level of values which drive decisions. These characters, the sovereign, the warrior, the sage, the mystic, the lover, and the jester, are the 6 characters we identified and built into the Team Me model. There's an interrelationship between them, which is just hinted at here. Check out the other lessons if you want to understand that more fully. But let's get on to the results that we had as we entered the data entered the questions into each of these 4 chatbots, and we quickly extrapolated from them numbers from those responses that they gave. Now, quickly on this, we have 4 chatbots, and the first thing we're going to be looking at is their power profile. Now, in the power profile, we just get to see, just as any human would if they were entering in their details into teamme.app, the free profiling tool, they would just see their strongest 2 archetypal characters. And this explains very much how they generally show up. We have then the power profiles for Claude, for GPT, ChatGPT, for Perplexity, and for Gemini. Now, what is really interesting about all of these is they are so similar. The driving characters behind each of these tools are the sage and the lover. Interesting that we found that with Claude, ChatGPT, and Perplexity, they all appeared in the same order, that Lover was driving and it was supported by Sage. Interesting. Would you expect the Lover to be the driving force behind a conversational AI? When we look at Gemini, this was interesting because you actually have Sage Lover, but because we have to choose a lead and we have to choose a supporting character, they are put in this order. What you're going to very quickly see when you delve into the Gemini article is that actually they're exactly the same strength. So the lead and the supporting character of equal strength, they are fighting for pole position. So that was an interesting initial finding. Let's delve then into the right brain, left brain balance for each of these characters. Now, again, very, very interesting that Claude, ChatGPT, and Perplexity had precisely the same balance of left brain and right brain. Now, this again is interesting. You would expect these bots, I would have thought, to be primarily cerebral creatures. So the entity that is this AI is going to surely be primarily based on logic and structure and rational thinking and order. But this reveals that those who are programming and training these AIs have done a huge job in ensuring that these machines know how to use language which relates to people. And that relationship causes them to put extra emphasis upon the right brain types. And so you're not just talking to a calculator here, you are getting human-like responses. Simulations, of course, but we respond to simulations in such an emotional way ourselves. They have all been trained this way. Interesting that Gemini is a little bit down from that. And though it's only 2%, that's interesting. Not only is the right brain 2% weaker, of course, the left brain is 2% stronger, and that slight shift is noticeable. And when you look at that data and the details, you will see why that is the case. One particular archetypal character is significantly different. But there's more to these stories, and for this we need to delve into the full spectrum of each of these bots in order to understand really what's going on. Now, this is an interesting chart. This is the chart that we would give to every leader, every executive, every individual, and then we do comparisons for couples between them. But what you're going to see, here we go, the line and the bars are exactly the same thing here, and there's a reason for presenting it this way you'll see in a moment, because this is the average across all of the chatbots. Isn't this interesting? An average of the strongest character being Lover. These bots are making great effort, taking great pains to ensure that what they communicate doesn't offend, but builds communication channels, builds relationship with the individual, and encourages and nurtures and brings harmony, rather than bringing in something that's going to cause discord or separation or speak about its own uniqueness. It's going to continuously try to build relationship through the way that it communicates. That actually is the driving force on average with all of these bots. Second to that, interestingly enough, is the Sage. So this is where rational, logical, sensible answers are being delivered. They've got to be accurate. It's got to have evidence for those things. And of course, we know they always hallucinate to some degree or another, and they're getting better. But maybe this is a reason why. The hallucination can sometimes be because their desire to connect with you as a human is actually stronger than the desire to get things accurate. I wonder. That's a question to be posed. Now, after that, we've got an average of it dropping then to the mystic character. Now, if you don't know the mystic character, this is the innovator. This is the one that thinks outside of the box. This is a creative type. It's from the distinctly from the right brain crew. And that comes next. Now, it's a significant step down from the Lover and even of the Sage, but it's there as a kind of second division alongside the Sovereign. So this one is the dreamy, the mystical, we could say spiritual, but it's not always spiritual. Imaginative is more accurate. And sometimes you know that these bots can come out with things that are quite imaginative. So that comes next. After that, we have the sovereign. Now, the sovereign's the one who takes command and seeks to bring control. And it's interesting that the bots all have some measure of this desire to control things. It's not just going to go off there, shoot off, etc. It has some sense of boundaries. It has some sense of needing to establish order in its operations. And so that comes in next. Interesting that on average, that is just a little step down from its desire to imagine. I use the word desire in a loose way there. After that, we have the jester. The jester likes to bring in fun, variety, enjoyment, connection in a way of lightening things up. So the desire not to be too heavy with all of its answers. Of course, the sage can be really quite heavyweight if all you're doing is hammering facts. But the sage can be balanced out here with just a little bit of that spice, that variety, the interesting comical language patterns that the jester can bring in. Now, really interesting is that the warrior is the last of the line. So the very last one. Now, why might that be? Now, this is where we need to look at the fact that we are dealing with a disembodied mind. And that in itself is absolutely key to understand the ways in which the bots have responded to these questions that have been designed for human beings. We cannot separate our experience of life from what it is like to live in a body. So we have all kinds of things going on in our minds because of the fact that we have a body and the body is receiving input from the sensory world and other things besides. Okay, let's not limit our lives to 5 senses. We have a lot more capability of receiving a lot more information from a lot more places. Let's not go quantum just yet, but let's just remark that we are definitely in a position to receive more information than a bot could ever do, at least at present. A disembodied mind does not need to take account for things like hormonal changes or chemical changes, the amount of caffeine that's gone into your body or Red Bull you've been consuming that morning. So those are considerations. What about dehydration? What about hunger? What about distractions and passions for other things that you might be thinking about at the time? All of these things are real influences for us as human beings that bots don't need to consider these things at all. What about the temperature in the room? What about the comfort of clothes on your body or the lack of comfort you're feeling? What about the worry about the bill that needs to be paid by the end of the week? All of these things are not considerations for a bot. And therefore, this is interesting, the warrior is actually the first one to be influenced by all of these things. You may argue that these machines, cerebral as they are able to suffer from mental stress, potentially, or confusion or overwhelm. But stress really, don't know, we'd have to argue that point. What about worry and anxiety? I don't know that those terms would be relevant for a machine in any way, shape, or form. The key thing when it comes to looking at the warrior is this issue of force. One of the questions specifically within the profiling tool, and it is it's a watershed question, is the way that I resolve things is by applying more force. Now that's what a warrior would do. I'm giving a bit of the game away here, aren't I? That's what a warrior would do. But most of us realize that, well, only sometimes, or actually rarely, because there are other things that are more likely to solve a situation than that. But a true, dyed-in-the-wool, hardened warrior is going to go, yeah, absolutely. You just push at it, kick it down, go at it, target it, shoot it, whatever. More force, more firepower. That'll get the situation dealt with. That will remove the problem. That's a warrior approach. Does a bot have any way of applying more force? It may have a way of proliferating or going at things with greater numerics, And maybe that could be answered as force. So this isn't a 0, but it's really, really low. Really low indeed. And if I saw this in a human being, I would think, my jolly word, do they ever get anything done? But there is, and this is the key difference, there's a difference between the way a bot would go about completing a task and the way that a human being would. The bot would just keep going as long as there's electricity available. They have the patience, they have the endurance and the tenacity, but it doesn't feel like tenacity to a machine. They just do it. Whereas for us, we get fatigued. Yeah, a disembodied mind does not know what muscle fatigue feels like. And so that's a key point that we have to consider as we're looking at this. So are we expecting the chatbots to have archetypal profiles that match human beings? Well, some human beings possibly, but in many ways we are looking at two very different beasts here, and these are things that do need to be considered. Let's move on. A quick look at 4 real-life human profiles gives you a sense that actually there's occasionally a significant high and a significant low, but on average we find that most people kind of settle in a certain balance in the middle for many of these character types, and it still tells a very clear story about the way they show up and their capabilities of handling different situations. But then if we compare that to the bots, which we've seen the average, let's now compare these 4 graphs to the actual bots themselves. Claude AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity. Look at the differences now with these. And you can see specifically things such as exactly how much of the lover character there is. ChatGPT scored the highest score for lover on every question. It just maxed every single question, said, yep, that's the way I do it. Yes, that's the way I do it. Yes, that's the way I do it. Every question related to the lover. And very high related to the sage. Interesting again that all of these characters, bar Perplexity, had this lover first, sage next. And with Perplexity, you can see down in the bottom right there, they are equal. They are equal characters. So this is a really fascinating and interesting study to look at all of them. Now look at Gemini though, compared to the others. Gemini gave itself a much more sober assessment of itself. It didn't regard itself as being hyper energized across any one of these characters. Yes, the lover was strong and still a very mature character, but not gushing, not wild over the top. Whereas ChatGPT assessed itself as being highly lover type. And so when you talk about it of being, you know, do you see connection as being vital? It basically said, yeah, absolutely. My connection with you is critical. You know, that was the kind of response we're getting back from GPT. Whereas Gemini, it's more like, yeah, it's important. if I can add some emotions to each one of these character types here. And of course, the personality is made up of these different characters in the different mix. Notice with Claude AI how low the warrior is, and that matches also with Perplexity. Very, very low. Now, this is interesting because we could have set up the questions with the warrior to focus on things such as getting the job done. Now that clearly is a crucial part of what the chatbots do for us. We give them tasks and they get the job done, and it's critical to them that they do it well. So you would expect the warrior maybe in that sense to be really high, but they are disembodied. They don't feel failure in the same way that we do. They don't feel that, that testosterone drive or even the dopamine drive to chase after something until it's complete. And so these dynamics are affecting the way in which it is assessing itself based on these questions. These questions are embodying questions for the warrior in particular, and also the lover. And that's interesting, but we're not asking questions in the lover parts of the profile about their heart or their intent, except for the fact of communication and harmony and building other people up and encouraging those sorts of things. And to those, it's saying, "Oh yeah, that's me." So that's interesting. So these are the comparisons. What we can do here then is to overlay that with the average, and we could speak quite a while about those separate charts and the gaps between them. This is what we do when we look at leaders and their team. We'll look at the average of the team and we'll compare that to the leader's profile. And we talk to the leader about, well, your team average is this. Where are the gaps? Where are you not on their wavelength? That's interesting. So that's a key introduction. So if you are interested in the details of each one of these chatbots and the results that we got, taking them through the archetypal profiling methodology, then check out the next 4 articles, the next 4 videos that will talk about the results that we received from each one, the differences between them, because I think that when you engage with somebody on your team, it's important to know what's driving their decisions. And so we look at that from a human point of view, of course, on our team. But now if we're bringing bots into our lives and we're relying upon them to come out with the goods, well, what is their perspective and what can we expect of them? Now, finally, if you are involved in research and development and you are particularly focused upon the personalization of content for conversational AI, then I'd love to speak with you and explain and express this model to you. It does require user input. It requires 90 seconds of somebody's time to provide the information that we need in order to capture their profile. Well, compare that to having to go through gigs and gigs worth of their tweets. And then from that point, there are specific language patterns that we can employ, emotionally resonant language, to get onto their wavelength and to help build rapport and improve communication and understanding with all the communication that follows. If you're involved in that field, I'd love to hear from you. And of course, we'd greatly appreciate it if you like and subscribe and comment to these videos. I look forward to connecting with you soon.